conversation is going round. People talking about the colors come to town. Fresh as a summer breeze, she'll take you by surprise.
Good morning and welcome to another fabulous episode of Fresh Waves here on Whistle FM. We have a great show lined up for this morning. Well, we always have a great show, but today is a really good show based on the fact that the municipal elections are coming up pretty soon. Before we start, though, we have to give a big shout out to Reeser's Market and Bakery for the fabulous muffins that are in the studio today. Apples, apples, apples. There's just apples everywhere. They've got a lot of beautiful apple pies, apple crisp, apple cheddar muffins, apple maple muffins. Beautiful stuff happening over there at Reeser's, and they're at 5758 Main Street. Go on and check them out. I always check them out at this time of the year because I have so much to do at Thanksgiving with all the kids coming home and everything that I cook the dinner, Reeser's makes the pie. That's how it goes. That's the rule in my house. Jason, welcome aboard. Thank you for all your technical help.
My pleasure as always, Ben. Good morning.
Can you tell people, especially today, how to get a hold of us on Facebook?
Yes, we have a Facebook group. It's called Fresh Waves on Whistle FM. We're also on Twitter at Fresh Waves Radio.
And you can call us here at the station.
905-640-1027. We
have with us in the studio today Arnold Neufeldt-Fast. Good morning, Arnold.
Thank you for having me, Brenda. I'm glad to be here.
Well, I'm happy to see you. It's been 4 years.
It's been 4 years, I know.
Now, the last time I saw you, you were running for mayor.
That's right. That was a different time and different place, and now I'm just glad to be an armchair commentator.
An armchair commentator. Well, we're happy to have you on the station this morning. Before we start our little chat, I just want to tell the listeners out there that this is not a political campaign interview.
That's right.
I chose you, and I chose you on purpose because when you were here 4 years ago, I was really impressed by your vision of community in general, how you looked at things in a different way than I look at things, and how you had different things to consider than I was considering. I mean, lots of times municipal politics gets put down to its lowest common denominator, which is, how much do I have to pay in taxes? And people don't think beyond that. They don't think of what those tax dollars go towards. What's the definition of a progressive, growing community that suits today's modern needs? And those kinds of things are what we spoke about 4 years ago. And I was really impressed with what you had to say.
You have a good memory.
Oh, I do. I can't remember exactly how many steps it is across that intersection at 9th Line in Maine, but it was more than it should be. I remember that. And now that my mother's living there, she's 88 years old. It now hits home because I need to know how long it's going to take her to get across that intersection, and it has become an issue. So we'll talk about that later,
we'll do that.
Before we get into all that nitty-gritty, I have to tell the listeners, this isn't a political campaigning. There will be no political slandering on this show. I save mudslinging for children playing in puddles and wet sandboxes. I do not participate in that kind of thing on this show. And I know that there's been a lot of that on Facebook and social media. I know that there's a lot of that within people talking and discussing things on the street. This is a nasty election this year, and one that I do not want to discuss. So we will discuss municipal politics in its basic form, let's say. But first, let's get a little idea of who you are. Who are you, Mr. Neufeldt-Fast?
Yeah, that's a good question. I asked myself that too. No, but most listeners probably remember my name from that 2014 election when I was also running. I'm glad not to be doing that this time around, and so is my wife. But I arrived here in 2006, so I'm not an old-time Stouffville person, but very quickly got embedded into some of the different circles here in town, and I love history. I love finding out about my community, so I very quickly learned about this town and its story, its where it's come from, and really where it's going, because we're going in it's already well planned out when we're going to stop growing. All those things quite frankly fascinated me. I'm a professor by trade, and so
You're at Tyndale College?
Yeah, Tyndale University College and Seminary, and I'm an associate professor there and associate dean. So that's my trade. I'm more the academic than the politician.
Right.
But as
what do you teach?
Oh, I teach all sorts of things, but I have a master's in philosophy, German language and literature, but my doctoral work is in theology, so that's where my teaching is focused on.
Isn't that neat?
Yeah.
So the next time I have a discussion about the Da Vinci Code and angels and demons,
let's talk about
I
that.
can have
Absolutely.
you on. Oh, that would be so much fun.
I have
Let's
a
do that.
colleague who's an expert in that, but I could comment.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
And I just finished the book Origin too. Oh, is
Yeah.
it Dan Brown promotion or what? But seriously, it was a really interesting topic, so we should
Yeah.
do that sometime.
Absolutely.
I'd be really interested in doing that kind of thing. Anyway, so philosophy is a great background for all kinds of things in life, I believe. Because you can, marketing is no more than knowing philosophy and how it all works.
Yeah, that's one way of seeing it, yeah.
Anyway, so you moved to the town in 2006, and did you do your little research before you moved here? What brought you to Stouffville?
Well, that again is part of the longer story of who I am. Let me put it this way. Stouffville was founded by Mennonites.
It was.
It was, right? And so that's my background. And so I know folks that are settled here, and I know folks that have been here for generations since day one. The whole Reeser clan, and Jay Reeser, who donated these muffins, would be part of that clan, right?
Yes.
So this was a known community to me, and
Right.
one in which I could easily embed myself into. So that's in my employment. I was living in Switzerland for 6 years. I was teaching there.
Oh, where were you in Switzerland?
Just outside of Basel, near the. That's right at the.
Beautiful.
Where the Rhine River separates France, Germany, and Switzerland. So that's
Right.
where we
My
lived.
family's Swiss.
Oh, really?
you
Well,
go.
that's another show. And I studied in Germany too for 2 years. So I've had 8 years of my adult life on the continent, and so I've seen some other things,
Yes. That helps
actually
to give a perspective, doesn't it?
Absolutely. Some people wondered in 2014, why is he talking about bicycles so much? Well, I've lived in a lot of urban cities where it's also cold and snow, and people are healthy because they've built their environment in such a way, their roads and their sidewalks in such a way that you just want to travel with, not use the car if you absolutely can.
Yeah,
Right?
but Europe has a very different attitude towards bicycles than we do here. I mean, if you're on a windy road and there's a bicycle, you're not waiting for that opportune moment to zip past them. There's a
Yeah.
lineup of traffic who is quite content. I don't know if they're content, but they're definitely understanding of the fact that it's now going to take them 10 minutes longer because they're behind the bicycle. They will not endanger the biker or themselves by passing on an unsafe road.
Yeah.
And they just sit in traffic and
Yeah.
wait.
So that's also part of my story, that European piece. But I grew up in Niagara, so that's where I was born, in St. Catharines, and
Oh, nice.
and so
That's a nice neck of the woods.
Yeah, it has so much wonderful agriculture. I mean, that fruit land is so precious, and I saw all of it gobbled up in St. Catharines. There's none left, and my dad was part of that building industry. So that's why Greenbelt, to me, coming into Stouffville and seeing the land here, I'm so passionate about the importance of doing whatever we can to save our agricultural land. So that was always just because of my house that we grew up in was built on a peach farm, and I saw it built, and I saw the peach farm before it got built, and so that happens so quickly, so easily, and it's a shame. It's not looking forward 2, 3, 4 generations.
7 sometimes.
7 is
Yeah,
the
First
best number.
Nations is the
Absolutely,
7 looking
absolutely.
forward. Yeah, I understand that. It's one of my big pet peeves. I went to see the Harbour Wells this year up in Halliburton. Very interesting geological. There's no water in them. They're just a rock formation. It's a geological wonder. And the geologist that was speaking to us has been teaching geology for 30 years. And when he talks about the glaciers that actually do not come and go back,
Yeah.
they actually come and stay and melt. And they scraped all the topsoil from the Canada Shield and the Halliburton area and dumped it here in southern Ontario. This land is precious.
Yeah.
Slice an apple in 4, now slice it into 8, now slice the 8s in half. That's the growing land that you have on this planet, and we are covering it with houses and highways.
Yeah, yeah.
Drives me crazy. Anyway.
And that's the way to understand the moraine. I mean, that phenomena and our kettle lakes, that's how they came to be. That's why we have sandy gravel soil on the moraine, and that's why that's got to be carefully protected as well, or else our our rivers won't be charged from the groundwater properly, et cetera, our drinking water.
And that's an education process. And that's why it's really good to have teachers that understand that, and teachers that teach that, and teachers that show children what they need to be guarding as they grow.
Yeah.
They are the stewards of the forests and the terrain.
Yeah.
And if we allow all of this development, it's just sad. It breaks my heart. It really does. That's just one of my pet peeves.
Good thing for that it's capped. 2031, and we're at full build out in Stouffville. So that's, unless some provincial government changes that.
That build is huge, isn't it? Like they're raising our population.
61,000 is the target, unless more density happens within Stouffville. So no further west than Highway 48, no further north than Bethesda. On the other side, we're bound by Uxbridge, and in the south, the Markham line. So that's the boundary in which we're building, and according to town planners, the other communities, Ballantrae, Gormley, will actually decline in total population. There might still be some more houses getting built, limited, but now we're 2-3 people per household, as opposed to previous era when there were maybe 4 or 5 people in a house. Yeah. So those numbers will decline. That'll have an impact on ward boundary changes, but within urban Stouffville, the urban community of Stouffville, that's where all the population growth is targeted, so that the greenbelt is, well, it's the town has no choice over the greenbelt.
Right.
It's a provincial
jurisdiction,
exactly.
Yeah.
And then, of course, a province could change that, but hopefully, I think there's on all sides pretty strong intention of keeping that belt buckled.
Okay. Well, is that one of the reasons why you wanted to be mayor in 2014?
Well, yeah, I mean, that was, and I think that it continues to be an important issue for debate. Like, all politicians running then and now were not challenging the green belt, except we've got a situation along the 404 where on our side we don't have the kind of businesses and corporate headquarters or warehouses that you find on the other side of the 404.
Well, we don't have the infrastructure to support it.
So that is currently off limits, but most of the candidates, I think almost all of them, are hoping for that green belt to be opened at least along the belt. What the terms used are the 404 corridor. So that's Woodbine up and along parallel to the 404. And Gormley is already, for a long time, has been designated for commercial. So that's fine, but they don't have the water and sewer to support like a corporate headquarters, right?
Exactly.
So this is really an important local issue, because we really need a broader tax base. We're really heavy on residential, and we don't have enough commercial and industrial taxes, which they pay more. And,
yeah, they do.
Right?
For sure they do.
And if you could either get water and sewer to Gormley, which I think would be a good thing for us, a fair thing,
mm-hmm.
Or, and this is where I differ. Then this gets back to your earlier question. There are some who argue north of Aurora Road, along Woodbine, and Woodbine 404 corridor. That's Class 1 farmland. Mm-hmm. That's already north of the moraine features of sand and gravel. So that's really good farmland, and it's also flat and it's easy to build. Right, and so there are folks saying that piece, maybe together with provincial support from a new MPP, could be opened up and get the water straight from Newmarket across the highway and
No.
So, ask your candidate.
I will, because
so,
you know what, these are really important issues. I love that farmland there. I like that barrier that drives between when you drive along. Woodbine, and then you have the farms on both sides. I like that.
You got to draw the line somewhere with the green belt, right? Is what I've always thought. And again, coming back,
why can't you designate part of Gormley and then leave the rest of it?
Right. So Gormley really is designated for that, but the region has not given that priority for sewer and water. So there are other places where where they would that for the next 10 years. There's a 10-year plan, and there are councillors of this current council, together with Wayne Emerson. They're trying to actually push that with the region to make this a priority, so that Stouffville has a fair shake at balancing its budget.
And that would probably be the cheapest option, which would probably be the Newmarket area, because the water's already there. It's just running it under the highway, so to speak.
Yeah.
And when you look at the other side of Gormley, it's kind of executive subdivisions and everything right over into Young Street. Even Young Street's not that populated right there.
Or even north. South is the Honda plant. Offices and plant, right? So
just bring it from there. Yeah. That's not so far.
Right. So the region has to say that that's a priority, and right now it hasn't been. So that will be candidates are talking about that and figuring out what strategies to move that forward.
Yeah. Interesting. It's always that combination of the difference between balancing everything, it's like saying that Algonquin Park should never be logged. Well, It has to be logged, or it has to be maintained in some ways. And is it all for recreational use, or is it just for land preservation? There's always this juggling act with the land that we hold so precious. When there comes a time when we don't have anything to eat because we've paved over all the farmland, it's a little too late then to wonder about the fact that we should have saved some for agriculture.
And even within the urban boundaries, it's always tough political decisions that have to be made. Like some of our commercial land has been made available for 2 new churches, right behind the municipal offices. So, we didn't really plan our urban space sufficiently to allow for some other kinds of amenities beyond residential and commercial. And so I think they make a really nice impression coming into town, whether it's from Hoover Park or from Main Street. And it's good that they're there. But that severely restricts the commercial land. Churches don't pay the kind of taxes. If any. I would need to check that for at the municipal level. But so it eats into the commercial land available to sell here in town for that would A, create jobs, and B, also tax revenues.
Interesting, all these things to consider. And I think a lot of people, like we said earlier, are just concentrating on what taxes they have to pay or what they don't have to pay. And they don't take into account all the different things that make a community.
Exactly.
You look at a community like Markham, and they have such a diversity. They have really dense housing in some places. Not that I'd like to see that in Stouffville, but apparently from the plan, that's exactly what's going to happen. We've now been designated to have buildings that go as high as 10, 12 stories.
Yeah.
Which has never been part of our landscape. And that's going to be a hard sell for a lot of people, especially people who have lived here 4 and 5 generations. Yeah. There's so much change, so many new subdivisions. This is just going to add another notch to the landscape that's going to be upsetting to some people, but it's necessary. We have no choice. Yeah. I mean, I realize too, I'm of a generation that grew up in a suburb in St. Catharines with big backyard. The dirt in the backyard was so rich for growing things. And now I'm on Millard with a little backyard, and had to think when we moved here, how is my daughter ever going to be able to play in this little space, right? But also with a European background, I realize that space can be found in different ways and places. It doesn't have to be your private backyard, but you need to create good public space. That's the key, and that density can be a key to vibrancy. So even our town motto, to be the most vibrant. There's a couple parts to it, but the most vibrant community in Ontario. Well, vibrancy can't happen in a car-dependent community. You have to bump into people. You have to create spaces, whether that's parks, sidewalks, libraries, where people are of different generations, different backgrounds, are simply bumping into each other and finding each other. And without those spaces, we are atomized into our little
backyards and our cars, and
What is the statistic? I think it's 82% of Stouvillians work somewhere else. So this community empties at 6 a.m.
Exactly. So in other words, and that's why when I come back from work, and I'm working in Toronto, on the northern edge of Toronto, but I don't want to get back in my car. I can't take the subway or the GO train to where I need to work. I need to go by car. I used to go by bus, but that's a whole nother question about how poorly served we are. And Jay knows a ton about this, and he and I are in great agreement about our transit woes and why YRT refuses to listen to this town. And Jay knows this very well, that all politicians have sort of said something. I think our hope is that more of them would know a little bit more about the stats on these buses. Of course,
maybe they could ride the bus with us.
Exactly, right? So I had to stop taking the bus to Toronto just because we made efficiency changes. And so did a whole bunch of other commuters for whom at one time YRT worked. So that's, if you want to get me going.
We'll do transit when we come back from our break. We do have to take a little break now. And Jason, play us some ads and then the weather for today. You're listening to Fresh Waves here on Whistle FM. I'm your host, Bren Masson, and we're talking with Arnold Neufeldt-Fast. We're talking municipal politics. It's a good conversation. Stay tuned.